go.
All right, here we go. Hey, what's up? Chris and Friends podcast. I'm here with an old friend, the guy. I don't know if you know this. You gave me the first job in the strength and conditioning, working with athletes. I don't even know. Old 309 gym.
Yeah.
How many years? That's over a decade, possibly, right? We're talking 12 to 15 years.
Over a decade, and it was your probably lowest paying job. And
I don't know. I had some bad ones. But I don't even think I gave the name. This is Jason Brader, right? Jason, we talked for a while previously about coming on here. We did a podcast in the past. We probably touched on all kinds of stuff. What I'd like to do, in a nutshell, because I think we already talked about it, life experiences, what got you to where you are today, right? If we go into this stuff, from childhood, high school, college, how did this stuff create the path that you're on? If you don't mind giving us a little bit of background about it.
No, it's fine. But so for those that don't know me, I was born and raised in Bethlehem, went to Liberty High School, eventually went off and played ball at Lackawanna, played football there, and then eventually graduated from Muhlenberg College, right? And I became a Hall of Famer, All-American, and all that good stuff there, playing ball. And what really I think really summarizes my past is hardship.
Yeah.
Overcoming hardship. Lost my mom and dad to cancer within 10 months when I was in high school. And my father was an 8th grade dropout. Came from a very humble, modest background. Parents, blue collar and that stuff, really, worked hard at that stuff just to help me and my brother Eric basically have the basic needs met. And after I lost them, it was really a really tough pathway. So my life has been filled with a lot of highs and lows and that stuff, but I think the one common theme is effort, like attitude, effort, toughness, and being able to really overcome challenge.
Now, in your first book, Why Not Me, right?
Yeah.
You talked about doing a paper route with your mother, right? Is that true?
Yeah.
You did a paper route. You were getting up at what time? 4 a.m.
4 a.m. from the time I was 12 until she passed away when I was 17.
Can you imagine?
Every single day.
I think your kids are older than 12 now, but can you imagine them getting up at 12 a.m.? Or anybody. How about 12-year-olds in general? Not your kids. So, a 12-year-old in general nowadays getting up there, man. That's impressive.
Yeah. Well, I think though that because of the day and age, those things aren't done now.
Right.
And I think that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a good thing. Ultimately, though, I think that we all will do what we need. Right. So what's needed
in that moment, that was the thing that needed to be done.
So I think that guys like us who are grinders, folks that work hard, I'm sure, I would think most of the folks that are watching this, kind of are people that work. I think that you always want to express like, hey, this is where I've been, this is what I've done, but you don't want your kids to have that same struggle and strain. Yeah. So it's kind of nice to see my kids maybe have some time to sleep in some, but at the same time
they're missing out on lessons. That's what I wanted. I'm glad you said that because
so.
There's a story, Kenyan marathoner, right? Olympic champion and all that. Hey, do you think your son is going to be an Olympic gold medalist? He said, no, he gets driven to school every day. I had to run. That was his answer, right? So when you create a better life for yourself, your kids then miss out on some of those hard experiences that you may have had or somebody else may have had, that Kenyan that had to run to school every day, right? So it's always trying to find that balance, I think, as a parent, where it's like, how much hardship, how much toughness, how much of this.
Right, and plus you have to look at authentic versus manufactured.
Yeah,
right? So,
and
then I think that's where your challenges in life is really the opposite of what you're taught in school, right? In school, you're taught the lesson first, and then you have the test.
Yeah.
Whereas in life, you get the test, and then the lesson will follow. So I think as far as my life goes, I was always faced with test after test after test, and I really had no choice but to either sink or swim.
Right.
And nowadays, I think there's a lot of people from the outside that are trying to put body cast on folks, right? So basically me telling you like, hey, Chris, know what? The day and age is getting softer. Let's make sure that you don't get injured here. Let's put a body cast on you. right? And it's like, well, why? Like, you're able-bodied, you seem to be in good health. So why wouldn't you want to be able to kind of push someone through the doors and say, hey man, go out there and get it? But now I think there's a lot of just safety nets. And there doesn't have to be. So if you think about someone that's walking on a tightrope,
yeah,
if there's $1 million on the other side of the rope,
yeah,
if you have that rope a foot off the ground, all right, would most folks say, hey, you know what, I will take that
give it a
challenge,
go. Yeah, yeah.
right? I'm going to go out there and I will do
That's
it.
right.
All right. Now, is the task different if it's 100 feet off the ground?
The only variable that changes is the height. The rope's
Right.
the same.
Right, and then
The
from
distance
there-
is the same.
Right,
Yeah.
and then there, your mind goes from getting the $1 million to falling and dying.
Right.
So I think that whenever people have some type of challenge, you have to put it into perspective, right? So if you want to achieve anything, right, you're going to have to take steps, right? So the line, getting to the 1 mil, you have to be able to take steps.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, there's a level of risk, right? So do you want to be able to, maybe take a first step, start walking across the line? Maybe sometimes that height's going to be a little bit higher. Sometimes it may be a little bit easier.
Yeah.
So really, life is walking a tightrope. But whenever you have a safety net too, right? So if you have the safety net, that's kind of like your parents there willing to catch you. More folks will take that 100-foot walk, right? When there's a good chance that if you do slip and fall, nothing bad will happen. So kind of having that balance between taking the challenge, having a safety net, and maybe be learning the skill first before you actually can take that tightrope walk.
I had two thoughts as you were talking there. One, Man on Wire documentary, Philip Petit. The guy walked
right.
from one tower. Did you ever see it?
Oh yeah.
But he said in that the last couple steps is where the falls occur. He's like, all of these deaths that happen on the tightrope happen when that body starts to relax a little bit, where they might have lost
Focus.
They lost the focus, right? They lost why they were up there. They saw the prize a little too soon, or they felt they had the prize too soon. Yeah, that was one thing. The other one was that safety net idea. I was just talking to some college girls this week. They were working out, and they were talking about starting like if you have an equestrian business, it would be best to get a business degree, where if that business fails, then you have the degree. But then I'm like, but then you're giving yourself a safety net. Then you're giving yourself an out, So you're creating an out that you don't need to.
Business,
Yeah.
marketing, accounting, and my background is really development.
Yeah.
Right? And just by saying, hey, if you fail, you can fall back on a business degree, which in turn basically failed you.
Right.
Right, so it's like, so if you go to school, you
fail-
learn all that
you
stuff.
fail the
So it's like
business.
basically, hey, I can fall back on
Yeah.
something that didn't teach me the steps to actually build something that works.
Yeah.
Right, and then I think right there, it's like life is filled with ups and downs. So just because you do fail, I mean, that's not a bad thing. That's actually a good thing if you can learn, right? And then, so why fall back and not just like re-examine your pathway, right? Say, hey, well, know what? Maybe this didn't work, but now I can look back in those old books and find a way to win.
And I was thinking of a way to tie all this in when we talked about the bus route. I mean, the newspaper route.
Yeah.
You didn't have a plan B, right? You didn't have a fallback option. You had to do it. Yeah. That wasn't inauthentic hardship. No. That was authentic hardship. You didn't have a hot meal waiting for you at home. It wasn't like your parents saying, hey, go get this paper route. Because if you had money and if you had food, if you had a great place to stay, then you knew that you would say, you would be doing it, right? But you didn't have it, right? There was no safety net. Yep. So you got those lessons.
7 days a week, never off.
That's nuts.
Deep snow, right? I would see the snow plows going, right? And you know when you're 15, you're walking that cold, treacherous, icy strip of walkways, and I'm throwing the papers up on the porches, and I'm cursing those guys that are plowing the streets. I'm like, know what? F these guys, right? I want to have the day off of school. And then I'm thinking maybe I will have a delayed start, but guess what?
Never.
Nope.
Nope.
I'm that dude that walked to school in 18 feet of snow, right?
Oh yeah, uphill.
Yeah, right.
Uphill.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. You know those stories, right? The previous generation.
Oh yeah.
The previous
Everything
generation
was harder,
always
like
has
we're
it.
talking about right now. Life was very hard.
Yeah.
Very hard.
I mean, even as an adult here, and I was giving crap to those 12-year-olds for not wanting to. I wouldn't want to get up 7 days a week at 4 a.m. either. You know,
No.
I don't know if anybody does, but
No.
unless you need it. So you mentioned this a bit. You teach business. You're at a high school now teaching. You work in strength and conditioning also at a school.
Yeah,
right?
yep.
And you have a private business going on.
Yeah, yep. So that's really more sports science, though. So sports science training, and they're really melding the two. So it's good to have my experience as a college coach, and also being a former gym.
We'll go over
gym
that quick.
owner
I mean,
now.
you had the gym
Yep.
for over a decade, right?
Oh yeah,
Fast
yeah,
over a
yeah.
decade.
So 18 years.
You were a teacher. You were a high school coach. You had that gym going.
Yep.
You took a pause, right? You pursued college strength and conditioning.
Yep.
You were just give us a quick. I mean, Alabama,
Yeah,
Louisiana
went to La
Tech.
Yep, and then I went to Albright College. Was
Right.
there for 3 years. Then I also worked at Rutgers and that stuff. Worked with their team for a few months over this summer. I think it was 21. And yeah, so I have like a lot of experience just as a coach, business, teaching. I taught psychology and sports psych as well. Just basically always trying to learn and grow. And so we talk about sacrifices.
Yeah.
You know, I saw my mom when she was sick, dying of cancer, and she would walk with me every single day until she got really sick. And just whenever times get tough, I just can put myself back in those like 14, 15, 16-year-old shoes and just think about the sacrifices my mom and dad made for me and Eric, and just how tough it was back then, and just the uncertainty I had in my young mind, like, hey, will I ever be able to do the things that I dream of? You know, will I ever be able to, have my own house or have a car, or maybe meet a person and, have a family? Because when you're in those shoes and you're seeing things like falling apart, it's very hard to just kind of like look ahead,
Yeah.
right? So it's basically every day was just like struggle and strain and heartache, and which I talk about in my book too. Just how that shapes you, right? And it shapes you in so many positive ways, but then it can also shape you in some bad ways.
Yeah.
And,
And when you brought up sacrifice before we recorded, we were talking about this. It's like where there's a give and take with everything. With a push, there's a pull. And if you're getting pulled towards something, maybe it's more to serve you, right? You said that I was sacrificing a lot to kind of chase some of my goals. And what you were sacrificing was time, say, with your loved ones or just family time, I
which
guess, in
is
general,
really
right?
the most important too. So that's why, like whenever we do things, I think that are self-serving. All right, so. For example, if you're going to college,
Yeah.
right, your goal is to go to college and learn as much as you can to hopefully use those skills and then get paid so that you can live a safe, good life.
Yeah.
All right. When I was a young kid, like I just felt like there was this empty void because I never really had a chance to get to know my parents that well. Through high school, it was just like constant turmoil and strain and just worry and anxiety. And as I got older, it seemed like I was kind of taught, you work hard, good things will happen.
Yeah.
And it just seemed like the harder I worked and as things improved, those feelings never escaped me. Like they always were a shadow.
Yeah.
And I started, at points in my life doing some things, trying to kind of like silence those voices or like silence that guy that's always like, grabbing me. If I'm out in a race, it's like somebody's trying to catch you.
Yeah.
And I drink and I would do some of that stuff, and I would work hard and I'd grind, and something good would happen. Almost the same as a game, like, right? If you win a game, you think about you win, you have a few drinks, and then kind of things get back to normal. You work hard,
Yeah.
Then maybe you lose. You're like, yeah, I know what. Let's have a drink, kind of like to push those bad feelings away. And then, so I started doing that. I started to kind of try to silence all these things by drinking.
Yeah.
And I didn't drink every single day, but I drank enough that it like really impacted my life. And it wasn't until I stopped drinking almost 7 years ago that like my life completely like turned around. And I finally felt like, you know what, Jay, you can live for yourself, but at the same time, I was living for my wife, my kids too. And I thought, well, now if I go harder, if I achieve these things that I always wanted to do, which was coach college and, you know, go to a big time school and show or basically prove to myself that I could do those things,
yeah.
that my life would get even better. But ultimately, it's just like the way I'm built. So it's like I'm always looking to achieve. I'm always looking for what's next. And the point is, you really got to be content with where you are. You know, like love the folks that are with you. Just, you know, if you're going to school, you're working hard in the classroom, work as hard as you can because that's where you are and that's all you know at that point. And if you get a chance, you know, go after it, but just realize that you sacrifice every day, and maybe the sacrifices of time you think that you're sacrificing aren't really the true ones. Right?
Yeah,
so,
I think it's to me it
sense.
sounds as if you were trying to fill a hole with these external, these extrinsic things, and not maybe instead of finding success as a coach, it would be like maybe finding joy in my personal life. Maybe that would have been the goal, you know, to pursue, you know, because you just ignore the joy and just chase.
Yes, yep,
and
exactly.
It never gets filled with, that void doesn't get filled.
Uh-huh.
And,
and it follows me every day. And I've written these great books, and I get contacted by people all the time, all over the world, saying, Coach Brader, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Right? You've helped me, and that's the most gratifying thing.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I always ask myself, did I improve and did I really enjoy my day? Right?
I will
ask you, right? How was your day? And I'm thinking, no, what else could I have done? Or what could I have done better?
Yeah.
Or if I'm looking at someone, hey, how can I make this person better? Then sometimes saying, hey, this is as good as it gets, right? Just being here, talking to you, right? This is great, right? You know, I get to catch up and we get to share some stories and that stuff and help folks. But I mean, maybe this is what's really
chasing freaking
prize,
joy. I'm trying to do it in my own life, which is why I am saying this in a similar fashion. Where like I always felt like, you know, you do this, that, and the other thing, and you're like, you're still like, is this it? Is this it? Is this going to be what life will be for the next 5-10 years? You know. So I'm just personally trying to change that. And there was a time my friend just came out to do this, Wes Morris. He was an addict, living in the streets of Philly, came out of it, does public speaking and all that now. That morning, man, I'm looking around outside and I'm like, this is nice. You know, but I always look at the work that needs to be done. I look at that floor over there that needs to get ripped out, the garage that's leaning sideways, all this other stuff, the trees that just fell that I have to get off our fence line. I still have that. I had it yesterday, but I'm trying not to. You know, I'm trying to shift it. Just be like, you know what, this is good. You know, our daughter's happy, she's healthy, got a good relationship. It's like, I got a cool job. Every time I tell somebody what I do, like you were the same response. I'm like, hey, I'm working at my daughter's school, PE from preschool to 8th grade, all this other stuff. Everybody's like, that's awesome. Oh, I got a gym in my barn. In a barn? What? You know, that sounds cool. They come out here. It's always good, right? But, you know, I still feel like something, you know. You gotta get something.
What's next? Like, what's out there? Like, always trying to chase that carrot. But
the carrot needs to change, I think. Because whatever's going on is not working.
Here's the thing that's
I don't want to say it's not working, but
what's wild? Like, I just love how you had said that people are like, oh, you do that. Like, almost like, you know, whether it's like a good, like, surprise, like, oh, wow, that's really
somebody could actually do that.
Or someone's like, oh, that's it, right? And then I find that, too. Like, when I was coaching, you know, I went down to Bama, and I basically went there on a whim. I contacted 100 schools and was like, look, I just want to go down for 2 months, go down and just lend my time and learn, right? And my gym's up here. My guys, they're working, they're grinding, they're, you know, doing a great job. And my mind's on my family, it's on my gym, it's on doing a good job there with the coaching staff. And I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it.
Yeah.
And when I was there, I was like, man, I love it. Like, I love working. I love coaching. I love the whole process, the grind. And 2 months then turned into 8 months. And they're like, hey, would you like to stay here and help out? And I'm like, yeah, of course. And I'm thinking, man, I have my gym. But in life, we always figure it out, right? So we either lose and then we learn from that. We win, we lose, or we'll learn from that. But ultimately, things work out.
Yeah.
And then if they don't, that means we're done.
Yeah.
Right. So if something like doesn't work out and it's catastrophic, but my wife's, unreal. And then she's the reason why I'm able to do all these things. And like there were days where I'm down south, I'm thinking, man, like why am I down here? Like I wanted to come down for 2 months. And she's like, hey, look, Jay, like your goal is to get a job, to go, coach college, and we'll make sure the gym operates, and I'll take care of the kids, and we'll make sure that we get down there, you can come back home and that stuff, and it will work out. And then I got hired by La Tech, and then like it was like, wow, man, I'm here, but it's like never you're there, because my mind was, at the time while I was training, it's there. But then as soon as I leave, I'm like, man, I need to get back to my family. Like, I need to get that next job. And people often ask, like, oh, how much do you get paid? How much do you do this? Like, why'd you do that? Why do you teach? Why did you work there? And it's like, look, man, like, ultimately, the money we earn isn't really real until you spend it. And you can make $1 million, you can make $80, but if it's not being used, it's the exact same, right? So if that kind of, I'm not sure if that makes much sense, but like so it's like I've never felt different regardless of how much I made, right? So I think the point is everybody talks about like value, right? Like a coach, it's like, wow, this guy's coaching at, say, like a major school. This guy has to be very good, right? This guy must be the man. Like he's getting paid $3 million a year. Maybe this guy's coaching D2. He might be making $80,000 a year. Maybe this guy, he's coaching for like a 7th, 8th grade school. He's making $3,000 a year. But ultimately, what's their impact, right? What's their joy?
Yeah.
Right? They're doing the same type of job, but it's like the value, or like who values it more. The fans, the school, the athletes, right? So regardless of whatever I've done in life, I just basically, no matter what I've done as an athlete or as a coach, whether I was being paid a lot or, was the best guy on the team or the worst guy, I've never really been, have really felt great.
Yeah.
Right. It's just kind of like I'm always trying to see like what's going to fill that void. Like it's always the same. Like I felt joy working with pros, and I felt the same joy working with kids that are 7 or 8, and it's like, okay, it's the same job, right? But it's like, so what's really important, and ultimately, like it's really, and people say this all the time, it's family, like being with the people who love you, not the people that are over like looking you, right? So I know that when I'm with my kids, they're looking at me and they're like, that's my dad. Right? They're not overlooking me saying, hey, I want to see if I can find a better dad, right? Where when you're coaching, or you're working, or you're training, most folks aren't always looking right at you as the best. They're always looking at like the next best. And I think that's a very tough pill to swallow. And that's the one thing I found like through all my journey, right? Just like whoever's in front of you is the best at that time. Yeah. And then, as soon as someone leaves, there's a new ass in that seat. Yeah. Right. So it's in school, it's the same, right? If you teach, right now the kids I teach, they're the #1 kids. But I can guarantee that next year there's going to be new butts in those seats and that stuff. And then, if I decide to teach, or if I decide to, do something else, there's going to be a new butt in my seat. Yeah. Right. So treat the person as if it doesn't matter if you're getting paid $1 or $100 or $1 million, whatever. You got to bring it. You got to bring the same level of energy and effort. With the coaching lifestyle, you brought up all these stops that you took.
there was, kids that I would work with went the strength and conditioning route. Then they're like, I think I want to do college strength and conditioning. And I'm like, what goes into that? And is it possible to not sacrifice family? You're moving around, you have all these different jobs. How do you keep it? Have you seen anybody, or in your own personal life, like how do you keep it together as a college coach where you take the next, because it always seems to be chasing that next best job, potentially. Some people settle in and stay, right? But it's like, hey, I'm at Muhlenberg, and then, that one double, then the Lehigh something opens up, and then from Lehigh, you could get into whatever. You know what I'm saying? You climb the ladder.
There's always
the
a
career
climb,
ladder.
right? And that's in any field. Like there's no such thing as balance, right? Because if there is balance, that basically means that there's no change, right? So if you're balanced, you have the scale.
Yeah.
There's no change.
No change.
Right? You're there, right? So what happens though if you have rocks, right? So a rock might mean, I'm taking weight off of one side, right, which is a higher paying job, right? But then your family's on the left side. So what's going to tilt?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Family, right? So the weight is on the family, like maybe not being around them, not being able to spend as much time as you like. So there's no such thing as balance in life. It's always working around imbalance, right? So how tolerant are you? Like how much are you willing to like kind of lean more towards one side or the other?
Yeah.
So that's so college too, you talk about being a father. Everyone talks about like absentee dads, right? And then,
it's a big
guys
problem.
are like, oh, well, the absent father. And it's like, well, depending on your lifestyle, that absentee father might be a dad that has to work harder, right? Maybe he has to go out and grind more. Maybe he's working 2 jobs.
Right.
Maybe it's someone who's reaching, straining to maybe get a job that's going to pay much more. That's going to be like a life-changing job, which is that carrot. So when you're at a major school, there's a lot of guys that don't get paid, and a lot of guys that are strength staff that get $0. They're interns. They're like GAs and that stuff, and they're grinding through their 20s, and then they eventually get a job. Maybe they're making $80,000, $100,000, and then they have young families, and they have a girlfriend or a wife, and then it's like as they climb up, eventually maybe they're going to hit it where they're making $300,000, $500,000, and then some now they're making $1 million, right? And they're strength staff.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to look at, are the people that are along the ride, are they understanding that that's part of it?
You got to know that from the
that's
get-go,
what you're
right?
signed up for, right? So I think
Which
that
sucks.
That it does suck.
Because after 5 years, you're like, you know what? I don't think I like this. We moved 3 times. Our kids had to change schools twice. So there's that scale. Like you're saying, the absent dad. Like if the dad's working all the time to provide a living, because that's what you need for the family.
Do it.
Then that kid still doesn't have a father though, too, right? So that kid's
Right.
still going to have the effects of that. And we were talking about childhood stuff and whatever before we even went on here, right? That stuff, it lingers. You know?
Yeah.
And you could be that 25, 35, 45-year-old starting to come to grips with like, boy, I'm missing something.
Yeah.
Maybe you didn't have your dad, maybe you didn't have your mom, maybe you didn't have this, that, and the other. You literally ran into a different scenario, but like, it's hard. It's just that, it is that. It's give and take. So as a father, it's like, what are you willing to sacrifice, I guess?
Yeah. Well.
And is it about you or is it about everybody?
Right, but then you have to think too, where you asked me about my kids, like would they be willing to wake up at 4 o'clock? But they were able to push through when I wasn't around. So it's the same sacrifices, right? But it's a different look, right? It doesn't look the same, right? So it's like when I was drinking, right? Even though, my family appeared to have, like a pretty good life. My wife has a good job. I had a very, good gym. I had a lot of clients and that stuff, and I was able to hide like a lot of things. But then my kids are around me and they see me at my worst, right? So they're having to overcome all that stuff. And
That's
then
tough, right?
You think about folks say, absentee dads, but you could be a present dad, basically living in the same home, and you're absentee. And then maybe you could be someone who's maybe not there every day, but be more
present,
like present, right? So I think that we learn so much as a family of like the sacrifices, and if you want to do anything, it's going to take that. It's going to be scary. You're going to have fear. You're going to have to just be able to just put your shoes on and tie them tight and say, hey man, I have to run today. And then there's some days you may trip up, and you may have to crawl a little bit, and then you stumble, you stagger, but the next day you're putting your shoes back on, and they may be ripped up and torn, but at least you learn that, hey, I can do it again, right? I can get up and I'm going to go hard again. So I think that it sucked leaving, but then when I came home, it was like unbelievable. I was like, it's so like I valued so many things that much more. Not saying I didn't in the past, but you really see like what the grind is. And then people ask me, well, do you miss it? And like, look at what this guy gets paid, or maybe I worked with this coach that does this now, or they've advanced to go to this place. And it's like, but are they really enjoying it?
Yeah.
And then there's guys that I know that were making like boatloads of cash that they don't coach. They actually went back to high school. And I just saw the one guy, and he's a big name guy, and was like, hey Jay, I see your like Instagram posts, and you look awesome, and like the kids look great. He's like, man, how do you like it? And I was like, you know what, man, to be quite frank, I love it. Like, I love the development. I love working with the young guys and that stuff. And I think the ethics of just training, or well, not so much that, but like the morals, or like the things that you're trying to instill as a coach, like, the growth and just like what it takes to be all in. I think younger guys really need that, and they embrace that. Then as you get older, I think you kind of lose a lot of that when you're in college, because it reverts back to that me. And so my friend got paid a ton of cash to coach, and he's a high school coach again. And it was wild, because he said, Jay, I feel the same way. He's like, I love high school. And I was like, dude, man, you're back. He's like, yeah. So it's wild, because he made like a lot, and people would be like, why would you do that? You're making so much. But the stress is like unbelievable, right? And it's, you're always at work. Like your mind's always at work.
Well, I remember growing up, and the Eagles training camp was at Lehigh, and I was, 10, 12, we'd ride our bikes at Lehigh, get a bunch of autographs. But then you'd see the lifestyle, you'd see the coaches. I mean, how could you not? You weren't seeing a lot of like physically fit people in the world of coaching. It was 12 to 18-hour days, and I'm just thinking to myself, I mean, a guy like Andy Reid was doing it for how long now? I mean, that was late '90s. I think he got that Eagles job, and I don't know how they do it, man. I don't know how they do it, and I don't know what life would be like once you remove that. You hear about those guys.
Well, it's a huge void too, because that's
soldiers to pro wrestlers to pro athletes. It's like they got 100,000, or they get that huge rush, and it's gone. Mm-hmm. And what do you do now?
See, and then that's the thing where I love competition, but I hate it too. Right, so I love the fact that it brings out my absolute best. Right, it makes me think, it makes me work. It just makes me like go. But then if I remove it, I'm trying to find ways to get it. And then that's, I think, once you're around like competitors and like the excitement and just like chasing something that's bigger than yourself, I think that's very enticing. And the only thing that can bring that is sports. Like the locker room, being around the guys, like just having the highs and lows, and just being able to experience those with your friends. I think that's very hard to get in life. So if you're working like an average job, like, I teach, and I love to teach. But, I mean, you're trying to get guys juiced up, right? Like, accounting. Yeah. Go. And the guy's like, accounting? It's like, I'm 16, dude. I don't care,
Yeah.
right? And then you have to kind of like try to
teach
find.
health?
Yeah,
Can you ever teach health?
Yeah,
I got these middle school kids for health, and I'm like, dude, some of these lessons, I have to get super creative, and I got to have stories, and I got to bring something, because who wants to learn about how to breathe properly or how to sleep better? Shit like that. Where we're stressed, and it just. Sorry, I did interrupt you, but like, no, I'm like,
true though. But we're sports though. Like that's what I love. I love the excitement. But no, I shared about my own kids, and I just love seeing their growth, and they're good athletes, and I think that they're going to do very well. They've done well. But I've never enjoyed any of their games. I've never enjoyed
I was
one.
going to bring this
like,
up. The competition is brings out the ego, though.
Yeah.
And the ego is something we're supposed to, in theory, keep it in check, right?
Yeah.
But every time I compete, it's not bad, but I start feeling, you get the heart rate pumping, you're starting to feel that, and you're like, what the hell just happened to me, And it's all over a freaking game of quaits or horseshoes or something, a game of darts.
No one cares, right?
Nobody
no
gives
one
a crap,
cares, right?
But it's still there.
Yeah, so my mom told me as a young boy, said, look, Jay, in 10 years, will anyone care? Right? I'd come home and I'm throwing stuff, I'm upset at the game or the coach, or I didn't play as well as I'd like. And then she'd always go back to that. In 10 years, will anyone care? And I've been trying to check myself like the past year and just ask, like in 10 years or even 10 hours, will anyone care? And as an athlete, I controlled what I did from point A to point B. As a parent, as a coach, you control only here. Like I'm offering this, but it's almost like if you've gone out to an all you can eat, right? You can have people pay the same price, right? Some folks are going to stuff their face, they'll stay for 2-3 hours. Some folks will be lean and mean, right? And some guys will, they'll go in there, they'll take a few bites and then bounce.
Yeah.
Right. So everybody's not going to be like myself. And I expect that, though. I expect everybody to be as intense, as serious. And when it's your own kids, too, you just assume, hey, these are my kids. They have my genes. And then I think that I was like a 14, 15-year-old boy thinking exactly as I think now, as a 47-year-old man, which is bullshit. Right? I know that's not the case. So when I'm working with my own kids, right, like trying to balance it out, like, Dad, like, who is this guy? Is this guy like a coach, or is he my father? Right? Where I would talk to my own kids, like, I'll tell them something like, hey, you need to do X, Y, and Z, and I'm like that hammer. But then if I'm telling someone else's kid the same thing, I'm like, hey, you're gonna be great at it.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's always a struggle for me. And I just like sometimes just have to sit back and just enjoy the process and say, you know what, my kids are just perfect, right? And which they are, right? And most parents, I think, will say that, but my kids, they do well in school, they're respectful, they're the opposite of where I was at that time. So I was a guy that my mom, who was sick, would have to go into school and sit down and really bailed me out of whatever I did. And I've never gone to school once for him. So I kind of have to just enjoy that part and say, you know what, man, my wife's done a very good job, right, of keeping them in line.
Well, there was my friend Megan. She was, I think she said, she's in New Jersey. They had this great youth track and field program. I think when she was 9, she said she ran a 5:55 mile. She became a pro runner. She ran at Penn State, all this stuff, but she's also a therapist now. And you see it when you talk to her. Like, I bet her body could be in 90, ready to shut down in pain, but I think her mind will not allow her to do that. She has a 10-year-old. So I'm like, so what do you do then? She's like, my daughter doesn't have that. Like, this lady is got a drive that is unheard of, right? And she struggles with it, but she said, do you want a happy kid or an anxious kid? You want a happy kid or a depressed kid? You want a happy kid or a stressed kid? So in her mind, she's like, I can get on her about gymnastics nonstop because she doesn't have that drive and that work ethic that I had. Or I could just kind of pause, take a breath, let her have her fun, let her develop at her rate, let her be who she is, and not
see. And that's the
be overbearing.
Though. See, that's it, and that's where I like hearing that. I'm kind of like, well, it actually causes me more anxiety with inaction. right? So if
But
I
it's
were to
not an
sit
action.
back,
Strategic
so
action.
but to me, that's like, how do you know? All you know is action at that time, like, you know, action that I can see, like physical action, right? If I'm like, Chris, you do not run fast, right? Go.
It's true.
And then, but I'm
true.
like, but I'm allowing you to just take the wheel, and I'm sitting there at the house.
But what about this?
And
What about-
wait. But in my mind, I'm observing Chris, who I'll just say that Chris is my son. And I'm like, Chris, you need to work on your speed. And then you tell me, Dad, no, man, I got to work on my speed. So I'm putting the ball in your court, right? You're driving the car. And I see you driving the car on PS5. You're driving that car, man. You got on the headset. You're talking to whoever, right? I can tell you're going full speed, right? Then a couple hours pass, and I see that you're still going hard on X, or like, you know.
Yeah.
So
I get you.
Ultimately, then it's like, as a father, as someone who's an activator, someone who's like pushing folks every day that aren't their own kids, I think it's so hard to be like, well, you know, if someone's telling you one thing and you're not seeing it happen, all right, what is the role of parenting? What is the role of a coach? What is the role of somebody who teaches, right? It's really to have people do things they wouldn't do otherwise, right? So, like, you know, most kids don't like to do schoolwork. Most folks don't like to strain, right? So as a coach, you're constantly getting people to do these things.
Yeah.
So do you say, hey, well, I'm just going to watch, and, you know, maybe they
Right.
just become that dormant, like,
If
just
this Chris
right?
guy's running slow, are you going to be at the fence saying, come on, that's not your best? Or are you going to be talking to Chris in the car ride home, how he didn't bring it and all this other stuff? You know, or I guess the other option would be to just find ways to motivate that child that aren't the direct. I guess some people need to be flanked, you know? Some people, I think, I mean, you have 3 kids. They're probably 3 different, right? 3 different mindsets anyway, right? So I imagine some method of yours will motivate one, but not the other, and vice versa, right?
So, but then again, I think that's the most overused word.
Which one?
Motivation.
Yeah.
Even the highest motivated people in the world have days where they don't feel like doing anything. So basically, the discipline, that's what it comes down to. How your point about me when I was waking up at 4 o'clock, is that driven by the motivation to earn some extra money?
Yeah.
Or is it the discipline of doing what I need to do, right? Because there's an objective, there's a goal. And the goal is to be able to drop off papers at X, Y, and Z's door. And when I do those things, I know that there's going to be some type of payoff within the next 2 weeks or month, right? So I think that the development of discipline, that's the challenge. Specifically now with children that, you know, get instant gratification. They're taught that everything has to be fun. You know, hey, is school fun? Is class fun? Is that teacher fun? You know, is it going to be easy? Like, these are all things that I think are kind of ingrained in a lot of folks' minds. Like, hey, like, they like the idea of the outcome, but they don't really know what it takes. So I think, coming from my background as someone that had to, like, sacrifice, you know, as a young kid, you know, going through all the struggle and strain, and what my mom taught me, I mean, she wasn't somebody that went to college, and my father, you know, went to 8th grade, and, you know, they didn't have much, but they worked hard. You know, I kind of didn't want to be like that, right? I was like, hey, you know what, I want to take what they can offer me, right, as far as the work ethic and that stuff and stories, but I don't want to be poor. You know, I don't want to have to strain like this. I don't want to see my kids straining like this. So ultimately, they don't have to, but they're going to have to learn the same lessons, but in an alternate way. So all I know is my head down and go.
Your path is
and
your
that's
path.
kind of hard, right? So
And their
so
path is going to be different.
We're agreeing that they have to maybe struggle more, and I'm not saying my kids don't work hard, or they're the ones that sleep in or are playing the games, but they have to learn that the struggle they have might not be the one that requires them to wake up at 4 o'clock. But it might be the fact that maybe by, say for example, playing a game is going to take away time from them maybe working on the skill. Hence, that's why they're not playing as much as they'd like.
Yeah.
So they have to figure it out. Like, hey, maybe I do less of this and more of that. So then we'll see how this works out next year.
Well, I don't think sitting around playing the game was ever part of. Should never. I don't want to say should never, but it's never part of the equation. If with physical activity, So I didn't want to imply that like it wasn't like this or do absolutely nothing. But I guess just figuring out ways to motivate. I think I'm probably the opposite with when my daughter's in here. Granted, she's 5. It is like I'm not coaching. You could play. You want to go jump rope? Go ahead. You want to do this? But if you enter the workout zone, you're going to be coached. All right. Yeah. Like if you want to do this, or if you want to play around, you can. But if you're going to work out with because I work with young kids, so there's 8, 9, 10-year-old girls here that are sweet to her, and if she joins a group, then I'm like, you're going to have to take some correction. But if you're over there jumping rope, practicing on your own, I'm letting you do your thing, and I'm giving her space to practice and learn.
Yeah.
So
plus, too, she's learning though, and that's the one thing that's great because even when she's not involved, she is actively involved.
That's what
she's observing, she's learning, and then I just know that with like the mirror neurons and stuff in the brain and all those good things.
You brought some about your youngest stuff, and I wanted to.
So, and then when I was a younger guy, when I started my gym, my kids were always there, and they're witnessing a lot of the all-time greats that played around the valley.
Yeah.
As they were developing and growing. And, I think those things do play a major role. And I think that's helped my kids in multiple ways. So.
I have a friend that has 4 kids, and she was in here the other night working out when they were there in high school now. And the youngest one is like fast twitch, like athlete, 6th grade girl that is just like stronger than all the dudes at her age, right? Benching more than them, jumping higher. Granted, there's a maturation thing there too, but like, I was like, you know what? It's more than just chasing your older siblings around when you're young. It's like she got all those mental reps. She went to all the lacrosse games, all the basketball games, and got 100 reps each game mentally. We got that stuff hardwired then. Mm-hmm. She didn't get the physical rep, but she got the mental rep. So then when she does pick up that ball, it seems to come a lot easier. And you brought up something about your youngest that made me think of that too, where, when she was younger, it was like, hey, might not be the most athletic, but she got to witness so much stuff. She watched her older siblings do all these things and run around at sporting events and chasing them around and all that. And probably got picked on, probably lost a lot because they were, whatever. But that stuff lasts. The mental reps. There's that Vietnam, prisoner of war story. I don't know if it's true, but the guy visualized himself playing golf. Never played golf before, right? Finally gets out, he gets freed, and then apparently he's able to play golf at a fairly decent level because all he did was just played 18 holes in his mind multiple times while he was a lot, stuff like that. So, going through some stuff here. What do we got? So what do we got to do? You brought up something too. I mean, you had a family issue, not an issue, a scare, right? I mean, we started talking about sacrifices made throughout life. I want to try something to see if I could do a thing. Mm-hmm. But then now, I think mind starts to shift at some point in your life. Where like, life's fragile.
I mean, like,
your days count. And
right. So, and then I think that's the one thing that everybody takes for granted. Time. I'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Next year, I will do this. I can see myself doing this in 3 years, where it's like, you know what? Focus on what you need to do today. That's it, right? So people will talk about getting sober. If you're suffering from addiction, people go to AA and that stuff, and it's like, really be sober for one day, right? But doesn't that apply to everything? Like, just be sober right now. Like, why not be a great guy right now?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Why not, if we're talking, right? Why not lock in right now on what we're doing here?
Yeah.
Right. But too often we're thinking about, how we may feel if we can have this down the road. Or, what happens if I'm all league and, maybe with my kids, hey, what happens if they're, playing for this high school team, or they're All-American, how good will that feel, or what will that do to impact their life, where it's like, it doesn't matter, right? What matters is just right here, right now. So maybe that's your goal, right? To become a star athlete. What are you doing right now? Right? Say if you want to become stronger, right? And I'm a coach, what can I do with you right now to help you become stronger, right? And how can I use my skills, right? Not thinking, well, hey, maybe I can write you up a plan, we can start next week. It's like, no, if we can do it, let's do it now. Let's focus on now.
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing that I've learned, like stress comes from what ifs, right? Stress comes from, thinking what life might be like or what it could have been like. And it's like, no, like that's not real. What real is like what we're doing here, right? So we're going out to eat with family and friends or, just.
And that reminded us that whatever the saying is like, why put off for tomorrow what you could do today? And I'm telling a kid, middle schooler this week, I'm like, you need to tell this person now that you're not going to that party, because if not, you're going to spend 3 days stressing about it and avoiding that person. I'm like, you just got to be good with your word and let them know. Tell them, just tell them. You're not going to be there, and you're gonna free yourself. And that's a small example, but like it's a true example. Like, don't delay it.
Yes,
I struggle with it. You could put stuff off, and then eventually it comes down to it, and you stress yourself out. The whole freaking population is anxious, stressed, whatever, and it's like
it's not uncommon.
we could take control of it in certain aspects, and doing things like that I think is important. Appreciating kind of what you have, what we talked about. Doing what needs to get done, do it today, not another day. What else? What else can we do to make life a little bit better here that we talked about today?
Well, think about this, okay? So, I often hear like trust the process, trust it.
Yeah, I know.
Right, and it's like trust what? So that's like basically having faith, but having faith in everything that happens that's within that, compared to attack the process. Right, so which means is, I can trust that whatever you're doing that maybe is going to help me reach my goals. I can trust that will work, but it will only work if I'm attacking it, right? If I'm doing my part. So if you're telling me, hey Jay, come down here to train in this great gym, and when we're outside, we're going to do some things out around your farm here, and I'm kind of just trusting that things are going to happen.
Yeah,
like, that's not the same as me saying, hey man, I can't wait to go out there, and when I hit this hill or when I do this loop, I'm going hard, I'm attacking it, because that's when the results come. That's when the growth comes.
Trust in the process. It's not a passive.
It's
not a passive thing. It's
attacking.
That's important too. And maybe that does get lost in that saying too a little bit. Like it's not going to happen too. You still have to do what needs to be done in order to reach it.
They're like patience. No, but you got to be impatient with attacking. Right, so I can be patient with like the long-term goal, right? So I have patience here with that goal, but at the same time, like I have to be impatient with my effort, right? Like it has to be attacking. So if I'm going to go in there, like I have to be focused, I have to be locked in. I have to be able to take information and be able to process that, then eventually activate it, right, to make change, right? Instead of just like patience, like maybe tomorrow I will know exactly what that guy meant, or maybe tomorrow I will be improved. It's like, no, I will be, because I'm attacking it. So, so
that's a good way to also put the way you frame things in your mind too, is I will.
Yeah.
You take control of it. I am going to do it. It's not that the process is going to bring me success. I am going to attack the process.
Yeah.
Not the process is not serving me.
Right.
It's like I am doing it, not whatever
like
else,
whatever
my great coach is going to do for me, or I got this incredible program. It doesn't. I talk often about like, hey, my older brother's a baseball player in college. I'm going to do his program. Why? You don't have the foundation that he had. You don't have the genetic that they have. Just because you get handed a program that says trust the process on the front cover doesn't mean it's going to serve you well. If you
trust
don't,
it.
I don't even know if that's the best example, but it's like you have to. You got to be active in it. You got to attack it. Like that's your word, right? Attack.
Yeah, attack. Yep.
And,
so and then too, it's always default aggressive. Default. Like I'm never just going to just wait for something to happen to me. Like it's like I'm going to either take a step towards fear, right? So maybe your example is like sometimes someone may take a shortcut, or like maybe they're kind of like maybe unsure. right? It's like, no, default aggressive, because if you take a shortcut, eventually it's going to catch up to you, right? That kid that wants to go to the party, like wants to, but knows they're not going, they're putting it off, right? Say, no, attack it, right? Make the tough call now,
Yeah.
right? Because eventually you're going to, right? So why waste 3 days stressing, right?
Yeah.
Attack it right now, right?
Yeah,
And then
call
it's
them
like,
up.
then
Get 'em on
maybe
the
you
line.
have 3 days then to try to make amends,
Yeah.
right? So,
Or you at least have some peace of mind. Now, you talked about, I think before we were recording, I asked this, I think about it often. When times are at their worst, in my life anyway, I feel like I always had something inside me that knew what right and wrong was, right? And there was times that I chose wrong when I knew it was wrong. And then that further sunk me. Did you ever have those? Did you ever have anything like, I don't want to say conscious, but basically that's what I'm going with here. Where it's like, did you ever have anything guiding you where you're like, you know what, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do the wrong thing anyway.
I don't care. Oh yeah. Well, I just think about when I was at my all-time low.
Yeah.
Right? When I would have something happen that was great. You know, say at my gym, I'm sure you felt the same here. You still do. You do very well. You know, when you get some sales or things are going well, you're training all these champions. You're like, man, life is good.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, how could I make it better? Right? Then I'm like, you know what? I've worked hard. I've gone through a lot. Why not have a few drinks? So then I would have a few drinks, knowing that I needed to be home. Right? Knowing that I needed to go home by like 7 o'clock, but I'm like, you know what? I'm a worker. I've grinded. My family's lucky to have me. I deserve a few drinks. Then I would have a few drinks, knowing that it's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm like, you know what? I'm going to drive home, which is wrong. Shouldn't drive home. I wouldn't advocate that for anyone, right? But I'm like, yeah, I just have a few. So in my mind, knowing it's wrong, but you know, thinking that maybe I'm like above it,
Yeah.
right? I drive. And then as I'm driving, I think, you know what? I need to go home. I just made some good money, or, you know, this is a great day or a great week. I decide to go to the casino to play blackjack. And I remember driving down 78 and I see the exit right to the sands. And I'm telling myself, I'm not going. I'm not going today. I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to go buy it. But it was like a magnet. It's like, nope, today I'm going to follow that id, right? That urge. So right there, that's kind of like knowing
Yeah.
it's wrong, but then at the end of the day, like kind of just saying, screw it, right? And
What made
that
you
was kind
change?
of like,
What made the change?
you know what?
One
My-
day, because you knew
My
where good
daughter
was.
was about to turn 12, and I was driving home, and I was up over by South Mountain, right? You know, if you go up that
yeah.
back road, winding all the way to the top, and I just lost $2,000, right? And that was like my cut off, which it might sound nuts. Most folks like now, I mean, $2,000 is $2,000. I don't know anyone that's just like, hey, I would like to throw it out, or if I did, who cares, right? But I lost 2,000, and I'm driving up that road, and it's like 2 o'clock in the morning. I just feel like shit, and I'm like, you know what, man? Like, my life sucks. I'm a terrible guy. I'm a terrible father. My kids thought I was going to be home at 5 o'clock, and then I stayed out, and you know, now I've not only missed time with them, I've lost 2,000,
Yeah.
and my life's done. So if you are from Bethlehem, you know the overlook. Right, so you're going up the South Mountain there, and then you have that little area, then you can see the whole town.
Yeah.
So I pull over there, and I'm standing there on that ledge, and I'm thinking, no, what, man, this is it, right? I'm such a scumbag loser, right? The opposite of what I dreamt to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked out, and I looked over towards where my old house was, and I looked over where St. Luke's is, and I thought about all the hardships that I went through, and this sacrifice of my mom and my dad, and then that same road, that same climb, I used to train and run that the entire month of July at noon, just brutal heat, wearing a sweatsuit, just struggling. And I told myself, I'm going to be an All-American, I'm going to be 1,000+ yard, you know, rusher, all-time leading rusher and that stuff in college. And when I thought about that, it put me back into the right frame of mind. And I was like, you know what, man, tomorrow my daughter's about to turn 12. This is it. I use that road, the same climb, to push me to do all the great things I've done.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't want to have my kids ever look at me, you know, or like the spirit of me and say, you know what, my father quit. Right? And I was like, I'm putting my head down and I'm going to turn my life around right now. And I haven't had a drink since.
Good.
I haven't had a drink. And there's not one day in my life that I wish I could have a drink.
Yeah.
There's not one day that I'm like, I can't wait to go play blackjack. It's like, no. Like all those empty days are now filled with family and just, you know, enjoying.
Good.
Like just doing the right things.
Well, I'm happy to hear it,
So,
man.
yeah, I mean, because that's like that.
It's a crazy story, yeah.
They like really,
Serious,
man. And then you've dealt with like just like a lot of hardship through, you know, just seeing it and you know, like everybody has their own like trials.
More common than you
stuff.
want it to be, man. Every family I feel like gets hit. Yeah.
And that's why like I just want folks to know that change will start when you make it. When you take the steps. And it's not easy. And if you expect easy, you're gonna be in for it.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it was actually harder destroying myself. Like I basically like we talked about this too, that I was unhappy and I wanted to use that as an excuse. Just to lose, just to come up with ways to take the burden off of me as a person.
Yeah.
And I was always a good person, but I just didn't know how to live the right life. And once I took all that stuff out, like everything else was easier.
Yeah.
And I thought that I drank to make it easier, but it was making it harder. So I think people that have seen people struggle with like addiction and like all types of things, I think they can relate to that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
All right, man. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Is that good enough? Thanks for
Yeah,
coming
man,
by.
yeah, man.
Thanks for sharing all that.
Yeah, thanks, man.
What else are you doing right now? You hyping anything up? I know you're teaching strength and conditioning at a high school. You're doing some private stuff. People can find you online, maybe.
Just like private stuff, yeah. So I mean, if they go onto my like Instagram, Fast21, FASST21, you know, they would like to reach out and you know follow me. That's great. Then also they would like to reach out and read my books. No, they're out there. I think they're awesome. So
I gotta get your second one, man.
Why not?
I only got your first one.
Keep climbing is great.
Climbing.
Plus, too, with that, man, there's journals in it.
Yeah.
You can like you know just keep track and take notes, man. It's
You
good
doing
stuff.
it yourself?
Yeah.
You doing it
Well,
yourself?
now sometimes I'll go back. So, but again, like everything takes work.
Yeah.
So it's
Good, man.
challenging.
Awesome. Thanks for
All right,
coming
man,
out.
brother.
See you, dude.
All right, thanks,
Yep.
man.